A huge storm is coming to the United States this weekend and next week, and this will cause some big problems, including the return of significant severe weather, which includes damaging winds, large hail, and strong tornadoes. Additionally, a big spring heat wave is on the horizon, and most of us will be above average for temperatures over the next several weeks. So in today's forecast, we are going to break down exactly what you need to know about the weather that'll be impacting the United States over the next 7 to 10 days, and we'll begin with what's happening across the country today. And we've had a ton of severe weather over the last 24 hours, and what you're seeing here is the remnants of all that severe weather, with very cold cloud tops aloft across the central plains this morning on our infrared imagery. And we've had some big thunderstorms, especially in the central and southern plains, and this was all from a tornado outbreak that happened yesterday. We actually had over a dozen tornadoes reported yesterday, anywhere from Texas all the way back up through Iowa and Nebraska. So it was a relatively isolated event that occurred, but we actually ended up having a bunch of tornadoes yesterday, and we might even see a few more tornadoes later today in parts of Texas and Oklahoma. We'll talk more about that here in just a few minutes, but it is going to stay relatively active for the next 24 hours. A lot of this moisture is actually going to move into the Ohio Valley and eventually towards the East Coast, where there will be some showers, some thunderstorms, and maybe even a little bit of isolated severe weather in areas like Kentucky. So this is a recap of yesterday's severe weather event, and believe it or not, there were 17 tornado reports yesterday. This does not necessarily mean we had 17 tornadoes, but we were live yesterday covering this event, and we at least had about 8 or 9 different tornadoes that we were at least able to see either on camera or even on radar. So there was plenty of tornadoes yesterday, anywhere again from even Omaha, Nebraska, all the way back into Texas. This was a pretty crazy event overall. We had one big tornado also just outside of Matador, Texas, and we actually began our live stream yesterday with that tornado. If you want to check it out, you can go to my channel and look under the live tab. It was a crazy tornado to begin yesterday, but again, we had a bunch of tornadoes yesterday, and we might even see a few more today, and we're going to talk more about that here in just a moment. Now let's talk more about the severe weather potential for the next few days, and we'll begin with today, which is Flying Fences Friday. We do have a slight risk of severe weather in place for a little sliver of New Mexico, Texas, and back into southwestern Oklahoma. Marginal threat includes Oklahoma City all the way back into West Texas near Midland, where our main concern for today will be large to very large hail. Believe it or not, yesterday we had 5.2-inch sized hail just outside of Matador, Texas, which, by the way, is just above the size of a DVD. Yes, that thing that you put into a DVD player. That is how large our hail was yesterday in parts of Texas. I'm not saying we're going to see that again today, but we could even see some more destructive hail, as the Storm Prediction Center has outlined an area where very large hail is possible. Wouldn't rule out a hailstone or two that are as large as the size of softballs later this afternoon. And there is a chance that we go live later today, so make sure you are subscribed to the channel and click the bell icon so you're notified if we do go live. The other reason why we might go live is because we could see a couple more tornadoes today. Back over in the Texas Panhandle, just outside of Amarillo near Lubbock, is where there is a low end and conditional risk for an isolated tornado or two. I could see these probabilities increasing later today. It's going to depend on what happens in the morning hours with our line of storms that's going to be trying to go through Oklahoma. So we'll have to keep a close eye on this. Definitely something we need to keep an eye on, and if we do have to go live, we will be. So make sure you are subscribed to the channel. And then once we go into Saturday, our severe weather threat will start to go down quite a bit. Another marginal threat of severe weather in place in New Mexico and Texas, where some very large hail and maybe an isolated tornado will be possible, but things really start to ramp up as we go into Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday. So as we go into Sunday, there will be a threat of severe weather in a very large area, anywhere from North Dakota and Minnesota all the way through Texas, but this is going to be a relatively conditional risk of severe weather. As our trough ejects, there will be a potential for some storms, but one of the biggest things that is going to be in play is our cap, which basically means a temperature inversion is going to be in place about 100 millibars from our surface, and that's going to basically lead to potentially our storms being prevented from developing in this region. However, if these storms can fire for some reason on Sunday, which is entirely possible, all hazards of severe weather would be in play, including tornadoes. Our greatest chance of that happening would be back over in Nebraska and South Dakota. So definitely make sure that you're staying weather aware on Sunday. It is a conditional risk, but it definitely looks like a day that we need to watch for very closely. Now, as we go into early next week, the risk of severe weather is going to increase a lot. We are talking about a large enhanced risk of severe weather already in place for Monday of this upcoming week across areas like Wisconsin, Minnesota, pretty much the entire state of Iowa, back into Kansas and Missouri and Illinois, where significant damaging winds, large hail, and the potential for strong tornadoes will all be in play in this region. And we could even see strong tornadoes and also very large hail outside of this, anywhere from the Great Lakes all the way back over over into North Texas. So we are talking about a large risk of severe weather on Monday. Now, as we go into Tuesday, the risk of severe weather will shift further to the east, and it will move towards areas like the Northeast, all the way back into the southern plains. And you don't see this very often, where we have a large slight risk of severe weather like this in the end of April, stretching from literally New England all the way back down into Texas. So we are talking about 2 big days of severe weather ahead, with at least scattered, if not numerous, severe weather expected, and we could even see a severe weather outbreak on Monday and maybe even on Tuesday. So one of the biggest things to watch for over the next few days will be our changing weather pattern. Over the last 3, 4, 5 days, we've had a lot of mesoscale features that have led to significant severe weather in areas like the central and southern plains, but it's all going to change by late Saturday and into Sunday, as we are going to have a large-scale trough move right over the Rockies, and this is going to lead to a big-time severe weather event on Monday and Tuesday, and this could even kick off late Sunday in areas like the central and southern plains, which will be an area to watch for. But nonetheless, this is going to be a pretty powerful storm system. Anytime we get a storm system in April or May that moves over the Rocky Mountains, almost always produces some level of severe weather, and we will have really no exception with this storm system. So as we go into Monday, this low will be moving over the Rockies. This will create a lot of mixing with warm and cold air all over the place. As this moves into the central plains in the Midwest late Monday, we are expecting a pretty significant threat of severe weather to take place, especially in the Midwest. We could even see some significant severe weather in parts of the central and southern plains. So we are talking about a relatively large area on Monday, and then eventually as we go into Tuesday, that threat of severe weather will be further to the east. Our jet stream will be more oriented out of the west and west-southwest, so I do think, generally speaking, on Tuesday, we are anticipating at least a bit more of a scattered risk of severe weather, but we could even have another trough as we go into Tuesday into Wednesday that goes right through the southern states, and if this happens, we actually could see a little bit more of an elevated risk of severe weather in the southern plains on Tuesday, Wednesday, and perhaps even into Thursday. So another storm that we'll have to keep a very close eye on, and then eventually by late next week and into the weekend, I do anticipate that our weather pattern will become at least a little bit quieter. We'll not be dealing with at least as much significant severe weather as what we'll probably see on Monday and Tuesday. Also, another thing to keep in mind as we go into Monday and into Tuesday, we are going to have a very strong and intense low-level jet, especially on Monday here across the Midwest and all the way back into the southern plains. And this entire environment will have strong low-level wind shear, which could easily lead to some tornadoes, and we could even see a tornado outbreak. Now, this is not necessarily a slam dunk forecast. We are not definitely going to see a tornado outbreak on Monday, but I do think the likelihood of this is at least 50-50 right now. It's definitely leaning, I would say, towards being a more of an outbreak type day here, anywhere from the Midwest back into the central and southern plains. The good news on Tuesday is that we will not have as organized of an environment for tornadoes, but we could still see some scattered severe weather in a relatively large area with mainly hail and wind, and then perhaps even a few tornadoes, but the threat would be definitely higher on Monday with our trough ejecting over the Rockies. Now let's put this into more simplistic terms with our future radar over the next few days, beginning with today. Showers and thunderstorms will continue along the East Coast and in the Ohio Valley, and then severe weather will ramp up this afternoon back over in Texas and Oklahoma, and we're going to go more in detail about that here in just a moment. By the time we go into Saturday, things are going to be a little bit more active back over in the Northeast and also in the central and southern plains, and then eventually by Sunday, we're going to be clearing out along the East Coast before our trough ejects over the Rocky Mountains by late Sunday. This is going to lead to some pretty high winds across the Great Plains on Sunday, so don't be caught off guard by that. Wind gusts around 40 to 55 miles per hour is likely. We could have a conditional risk of severe weather on Sunday in the central plains, but it does not look overly impressive right now in terms of our storms actually firing, because we'll probably have a cap in place, which should prevent storms from developing. By the time we go into late Monday, storms will really start to ramp up across the Midwest, and we'll also have some storms even back over into the central plains. The GFS model is not really as widespread with storm activity, but the European model, on the other hand, is showing a lot more storms during Monday afternoon, and so we're gonna have to watch this very closely. There are still some model discrepancies right now, but with the ingredients that we have on Monday, this should easily produce at least some significant severe weather in either the Midwest or in the central plains, or perhaps even both. And just to show you some of those model discrepancies, this is once again the European model Monday afternoon and evening, and notice that we have plenty of severe weather happening back over in the Midwest, plenty of showers and thunderstorms. Same thing goes all the way from Texas back into Kansas, so it does look like we're gonna have a pretty active Monday, but I do think most of the storms on Monday will be more scattered. I don't think we're really talking about a linear line of thunderstorms, meaning I do not think we're all going to see storms on Monday, but I do think there will at least be some scattered storms that produce severe weather, which could actually help to increase the tornado threat, by the way. By the time we go into into Tuesday, the European model does show a much more elongated area of severe weather, anywhere from the Great Lakes all the way back into the southern plains, where damaging winds, hail, and a couple of tornadoes would be in play. And then eventually by Wednesday and Thursday, things become a lot more active back over in the southern plains, which the GFS model picks up on pretty perfectly. This is Wednesday afternoon and evening, and notice how we have a resparking of more showers and thunderstorms across the central and southern plains, and we'll likely end up seeing more significant severe weather on Wednesday of next week back over in Texas and Oklahoma. And then by Thursday into Friday, that trough moves into the Ohio Valley with likely some isolated severe weather left over. And then anytime beyond Friday, things become pretty uncertain, but I do think by the middle of May, we are going to see a death ridge build, and this could lead to some relatively dry and warm weather for a large chunk of the country. And we're going to talk a lot more about what this means in a future forecast once we're done with our significant severe weather that's upcoming on Monday and Tuesday. Now let's talk a little bit more about our timing for severe weather today. We do have some showers and thunderstorms out there in Oklahoma this morning. This could hinder our development a little bit later this afternoon, but I do not think it's going to be much of a problem for the storms that are going to be going on over in far western Texas and the Texas Panhandle. Right around 4 to 5 o'clock is when I do anticipate some initiation of large to very large hailstorms, in addition to potentially some tornadic supercells. And I think our greatest risk for a tornado would be in this environment right here. So anywhere just to the south of Amarillo, back in and around Lubbock, and just to the west of Childress. I do think that's where our greatest threat of maybe an isolated tornado or two will be. Eventually by 8 to 9 o'clock, these storms are just going to continue all across the Texas Panhandle with big hail, and they are not going to be very quick moving storms. So localized flooding will be in play, and severe weather really should continue all the way through the late evening and overnight hours tonight. And then eventually by tomorrow morning, a line of thunderstorms will try to push its way towards Dallas, Fort Worth, and Oklahoma City, but it'll mostly be rain by then. I don't really anticipate there to be much severe weather left over with this system. And a few more storms will try to fire up on Saturday back over in New Mexico and far west Texas, where additional hail and a low tornado risk will exist. And over the next couple of weeks, our temperatures will continue to stay mostly above average across the country, even over in the Pacific Northwest into the Great Plains and across the East Coast. There is one area though between Wednesday of next week all the way through Sunday of next weekend that we could even have some below average temperatures, and that's back over in Michigan and the upper peninsula of Michigan. So maybe a little bit of colder weather over there, but otherwise it is going to be mostly hot across the country. Spring has definitely kicked into full gear. As always, thank you all so much for watching today's forecast. If you are new to the channel, make sure to subscribe down below. There is a low chance that we go live later today. If we do not go live for some reason, then we will have another video tomorrow morning talking all about this upcoming severe weather event in full detail. And then our next video will be on Sunday, and there's a chance we go live on Sunday. Very likely we're live on Monday, and very likely we're live on Tuesday. So make sure you subscribe to the channel and click the bell icon so you're notified with the latest updates.